Now I'll outline the general workflow of a synthesizer. Synth makes wave, sound comes out. The end. Thanks for watching. Alright, so there's more to it than that. The general workflow would be something like this. First, you have some source for the sound. It could be a simple wave, or it could be something more complex, like a sample, or a wave being affected by a second wave in a specific manner. Could be even noise. You'd be surprised how sound designers work with noise to make some interesting sound. We'll see all that in detail in the upcoming videos. But before we have to think how the sound is even played, it usually needs some user input. So when you play different notes, you expect different pitches respective to the notes you play. There is also how strongly that note is played, which is the idea of velocity. It's usually related to amplitude but not necessarily restricted to that. There's also things like polyphony, monophony, legato, portamento, etc., which all depend on the incoming notes. I'll also explain that in more detail in another video. Then you have some post-processing step, some way to change the sound that comes from the source. Now, it's important to know whether it's applying to each node in case of simultaneously playing sources or if it applies to the whole thing. This step could be filters, chorus, distortion, and the such. Let's open up a parenthesis and talk about modulation for a second. Modulation essentially means some parameter is dependent on something else. In a sense, earlier when I mentioned playing notes and getting different pitches and amplitudes, you could say pitch and amplitude are being modulated by the incoming notes. And modulation, that's where I wanted to get. Most synthesizers have some way of modulating parameters on a time basis. So maybe you want the amplitude to be higher when the note is first played, then quickly sizzle out. Or you could want the filter to go back and forth like a pendulum. There's many possibilities, as you will see soon enough. Of course, that was just a very general view of how a synth works. And even then, someone could come up with a different signal flow that doesn't respect these guidelines. But this one is by far the most common and what you will find in the wild. This flow may look kind of stiff and restricted, but it's actually pretty flexible, as you will see when I start showcasing different synthesizers later on. Now let's look at one real example. Now take a look at this. This is a software synthesizer. It's called EX024. It is not the best synthesizer out there, far from it, but it is great for teaching all these concepts since it covers all the steps and at the same time is very compact. So take a look. It has two oscillators, so two sound sources. Each sound source it has many many different wave shapes available. Each wave shape is its own timbre. So you have sine wave, saw wave, ramp, triangle, pulse. You also have noise, two types of noise, and the other oscillator has the same options. Now you have this section that is related to pitch. So when you play a note, it, as I explained, when I play a different note, it plays a different pitch. but this section actually changes the pitch plate. So take for example, I click the transpose button here, and this one changes the octave. And the fine is just for fine tuning. And you also have this mix thing. So what it essentially does is to shift from one oscillator to the other. So you get like so when the mix is completely on the right, you play only oscillator 2. When it's on the left, you play oscillator 1. When it's on the middle, you play both. And what's interesting about this is that you can make one oscillator support the other. So for example, I change the octave. Now I have a sub. But let's go back to our sine. You also have a filter, which is, as I talked about, post-processing. So let's change to the triangle. The effect will be more obvious. It changes the coming signal. And you also have time manipulation, although you only have that for volume. It's not very flexible in that respect, but even then you can make a variety of different sounds with it. So that's pretty much it for this synthesizer. It, as you saw, there's not anything else to talk about this, but there is already a wealth of possibilities. So check, for example, the presets it has. And remember, I said presets are not necessarily bad. So let's look at this. So as you can see, with only this, you already have many possible sounds. Just imagine a larger synthesizer. What could it do? So that's it. In the upcoming videos, I'll talk about each step in detail. So stay tuned, okay? Bye bye.